Hello everyone, my name is Kira and today I will be covering the 5.3 banners and you should pull for them. But before we actually begin, I would like to give the usual brief warning that this is purely an objective look at the characters and their meta values. If you like anyone more than others, just pull them. There's no reason to watch this. This current lineup has some really great characters, including the Chronicled Wish, so yeah. Without further ado though, let's actually begin. Starting off strong with the Pyro Archon, Mavuika. She's quite an interesting case, to be honest. For those who don't know, she can be an on-field DPS and an off-field sub-DPS. Her E skill does off-field damage, very high off-field damage by the way, rivaling Shangling numbers, with the only actual difference is that it's slower Pyro app and it's also through her skill, so it doesn't need energy. The Pyro application doesn't actually affect many teams like I thought it would. A lot of the time the Pyro app from Shangling is extra and you don't need it. I will go more in depth later, but that's the gist of it. The really interesting part here is her burst, where she can briefly go on field and do lots of damage. Think of her as like Pyro Raiden as an example. But the unique mechanic here is that she doesn't use energy at all, which is both good and bad. Instead, she uses Night Soul energy or the Natlan character energy for those who are unaware. This means that the ER substats might as well be useless on her, but that's honestly fine, I guess. Much better than needing 230% ER like a certain unit I know. Oh, and her passive makes it so that her ultimate gives a 25 to 50% damage percent increase, depending on how much charge you have, which is the Night Soul charge. You can have 200 at the max, but you can ult at 100 if you want to. Off-field, I would recommend just stacking it to the full and then doing that. What does this mean for Mavuika though? It means that you're kind of locked to having an Atlan unit on your team besides her. But frankly, that's very tame, given that it's only her only restriction. Shangling has plenty. I don't even want to go into them. Currently, Shilonen is at the tippy top of the meta and will probably stay that way for quite a while. The only other option would be Citlali or even Ororon if you're F2P and have no one else. I wouldn't say she's very bad, honestly. She's still much better than Shangling in a lot of her teams and it's not even close. With her basic kit description out of the way, what does this mean for her meta? Despite some of the big hate she's getting, I personally think she'll be top tier easily. Remember when people said Furina will be made in that aged like milk? Yeah, that's what's gonna happen, exactly. If you look at her numbers, they are insane. She can out DPS a fully buffed Shangling, which is not an easy feat for an off-fielder. And as an on-field DPS, she used to out DPS Arlecchino, the second best DPS by 20%. Now they are equal in damage, but Mavuika has no cringe gameplay issues like Arlecchino does with like the whole can't be healed and stuff. And a very small team building restriction again compared to Arlecchino who can't even use a healer or Furina. Meta-wise, she's gonna be top tier likely, just not at the tippy top of the meta like Furina. She's not gonna be a complete game changer like her or Furina, like Nahida. So I will always recommend Mavuika, no matter what, unless you just don't like the character, don't enjoy her, etc. Moving on to the second new character, we have Citlali, a long-awaited character by the big chunk of the community, including me. Thankfully, her kit is a lot simpler this time. Her E summons two dolls that attack even off-field and has a shield. Her Q is just big damage. Her passive is also quite important, as it provides 20% rest shred for Pyro and Hydro units if she doesn't a corresponding elemental reaction to those elements. Citlali is a little niche, but Citlali is a little niche. She does an acceptable amount of damage, let's say, and her shield is really good. And she can use Scroll, making her a really good middle ground between the comfort of Zhongli and the comfort of Zilonen. No, sorry, fuck. The comfort of Zhongli and the damage of Zilonen. One of my biggest gripe was that there isn't like a middle ground between Zilonen and Zhongli. If you use Zhongli, you lose a lot of damage, and if you use Zilonen, you lose a big chunk of comfort through Zhongli's shield. With Citlali, it's not that bad anymore. Citlali's buffs are only marginally less than Zilonen's, and her shield is a lot weaker than Zhongli's. It's still enough to provide for the top DPS like Mavuika, Arlecchino, or Deviet. Her only issue is that any other team with her is very weak, so she's only good as like a semi-comfort, semi-damage option for those who are looking for an in-between like me. Meta-wise, she's very much worth it if you have Nuilet, Mavuika, or Arlecchino. Otherwise, not really, but yeah, she's never really a pull priority, so worry not if you don't like her. Moving on to phase 2, and man, Hoyo is savage. They put Arlecchino after the character that power creeps her with no regard. Absolutely crazy. The kit review will be a lot shorter this time though, because she's been out for a while, so no need to go in depth. Her kit is simple. You need to apply Bond of Life to your enemies through her skill or burst, and then that infuses her normal attacks into pyro damage that does a lot of big stuff. Big damage. Also, she can't be healed, but in turn she has 20% resistance to all type of damage, along with her ult being the only thing that can heal her. Overall, her damage was really crazy back then, so it was worth pulling her back then. But now we have a rival that does what she does, and more, and with less gameplay issues, let's say, and team building restrictions. She's great if you like her, but meta-wise, I'd be hard-pressed to recommend her given that Mavuika is in the banner right before her anyway. Moving on to the final character, Clorinde. She's a very simple but effective electro DPS. If you press E, you normal attack 3 times, and you press E to launch. And repeat that until her duration is over. Her ultimate is simple nuke, you use that before you use her skill. You might think that makes her mid, but actually not. She's the best electro DPS by a long shot, even DPSing characters like Arlecchino, and has a wide variety of teams. Along with that, she has a self-heal that allows for more comfortable setups without a healer, a trait that no other character has, except Novelette. He's kind of an outlier, so yeah. Her value is really good, but she kind of suffers because the first phase has Mavuika, one of the best DPS in the game, and then on the same phase as she does, we have Arlecchino, a character that out DPSs her by a very good margin. So overall, she's a good pickup still, but like as a DPS and as the worst DPS in the banner, her value is just inherently lower, but that just speaks volumes on how insane the banners are, so yeah, I recommend her still. Moving on to a pleasant surprise actually, I had to change the script to add the Chronicled Wish. Chronicled Wish makes a return after nearly a year's absence, and this time it's so much better because it's less restrictive. And so because of that, we finally have a Shenhe rerun, a Baizhu rerun, Xiao, Ganyu, Tartaglia, Keqing, and Qiqi. These are the characters that return. So yes, you heard me. Shenhe has a rerun after a 2-year absence. We have been waiting for so long. But in all seriousness, I can't cover anyone with full detail because of the sheer volume of the characters, but I'll briefly define their character values and like their meta and stuff. Cue the speedrun timers. Xiao is a great anemo DPS, but he kind of suffers if you don't have his relatively expensive BIS team. Overall good, but only if you're a dedicated fan. Ganyu is low-key underrated and her teams are not half bad, but as a DPS and having a cringe bow playstyle, she falls off heavily for most people. Again, she's only really good if you're a super dedicated fan and willing to go past her issues. Keqing and Qiqi are standard units. Qiqi is obviously bad, but Keqing is actually okay, underrated again. She suffers from the fact that her direct power creep will be in the same phase that being Clorinde, so both are bad pickups meta-wise. Tartaglia is kind of a one-trick pony with him having only one good team that falls off heavily without massive vertical investment. I'm talking like C2 R1 and then C1 R1 Kazuha or something like that. Only good if you want to try international, which it fell off the meta by the way. Don't let anyone fool you. Shenhe is a very niche buffer for Kawaii DPS like Ayaka, and Ayaka. Sadly, she's only really good for Ayaka as a BIS and the rest have a lot of other issues. She's only really good if you're a dedicated Ayaka fan like I am, so I'll probably attempt to get her. Baizhu is the only half-decent unit on here because he's a healer and a buffer. He's good for Dendro teams, Furina teams, and both alike. I heavily recommend him if you don't happen to have many Furina options, which you might don't, as Dendro isn't usually very interruptive reactions-wise, and a lot of the times it enhances them. Phew, that was it. Anyways, this might make you question though, what's the pull priority for each unit? And I think it's simple. For me, it's Mavuika over Citlali, over Arlecchino, over Clorinde in a purely objective standpoint. Mavuika is easily the best unit here with Citlali not being much behind, with her being like a little nicher. And then Arlie and Clorinde are both really good DPS, but they have, inherently less value because they're a DPS. They're worth it overall if you like them or have extra gems that you want to blow. They're not bad. About the Chronicled Wish, meta-wise it's just Baizhu over everyone else. Only get them if you care about them or you're a dedicated fan. None of them are really that meta, and Baiju's like semi-meta now after Shilonen. Nothing too much to say here. And with that, I ranked every single character on the 5.3 banners, including the Chronicled Wish. If you enjoyed this video or find it helpful, please like and subscribe. I'm a small content creator. I appreciate any engagement. Have a good day or night, wherever you are, and goodbye.